what are today's numbers?
We're approaching $5 million like annually. I think it was 18 people that I think were essentially on pre-sell lists. Only 2 of them actually signed up. My experience running the maid service gave me an in for all of our early customers, but in hindsight, the biggest benefit for me was the confidence. If you were trying to build a successful software company, you should assume that your software will never be done.
Amar Ghose, he's the guy who turned his struggling cleaning business into a $5 million per year SaaS. Today's episode is packed with practical takeaways for founders building their MVP. We're talking about how Amar validated his idea by cold calling other cleaning companies, why 40% of his customers left after one terrible product update, and how he's built a dominant position in his niche without any outside funding. So if you're thinking about turning your service business into software, or if you're a non-technical founder trying to figure out how to validate an idea, this one is for you. So hey, Amar, so what is your personal background, right? What business were you in before you started building software?
So I came across a thread on Reddit almost 15 years ago now on essentially how to start your own cleaning business without doing any of the cleaning. It was essentially like building up an agency where you're connecting, being a matchmaker between cleaning leads that you're generating online and then cleaners that you're finding, maybe through Craigslist or whatever. And so I started that and ran that for about 14 months in Southern California. And that's how I got started.
Wonderful. What background did you have? Was that more around marketing and you said, hey, let me try to use that to build an actual business?
So I at the time, I was still very early on in my career and was trying to kind of find my way. I knew at that point that the only thing I was going to get hired to do was sales. It's funny that you ask about marketing because after starting the maid service, essentially marketing was what I realized that I really liked. That's where I felt like I could be creative within the business and stuff. And so one of the reasons for actually starting ZenMaid was because the worst case scenario was it would give me a product to market that then I could use to go out and get a job if it all fell through.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so 14 months into running your cleaning company, how big was it? Can you share any sort of numbers? What was the environment there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it wasn't like a very big or very successful company. I think at the high point we were at about 8 cleaners, but anyone that's run a cleaning business knows that it's a very high turnover business. So I think when I moved on, because I moved on from it after I think about 13 or so months, that I think we might have had four cleaners who we maybe had working half time or something like that. So it wasn't a success by any means.
Oh, sure. So it sounds like you do have quite a few things that you say you didn't really like about the service business model in general. Is there anything else? And was there anything that you actually really liked?
I mean, I think it just depends on almost from what perspective you're sort of looking at it from. That for me, I think that cleaning businesses in particular are a really great business to get into because there's almost no barrier to entry. So that makes it really good to get into, but also makes it really difficult to win at because there's so much competition. And so for me, that service business was exactly the business that I needed in my life at that time for me to continue kind of my growth path towards kind of where I am now. In comparison to running a software that I run remotely and everything, I do miss kind of the geographical location to it and feeling like you really had an impact in a small area, where now I have a much bigger impact running ZenMaid, but it also it's so distributed that it feels very anonymous and very up in the clouds, right? I know the impact is real, but it's a lot easier to see when you're running a local business. And so sometimes that could be a lot more motivating and just give you a much different sense of kind of success,
belonging,
maybe
also,
belonging,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I hear you. So what was your day-to-day like? And what was the biggest problem in that business? Or was that really the turnover?
So honestly, like I don't really have too much to really say on that because we were running it really like part time and kind of doing everything where it was designed from the beginning for me to be able to run it by just answering a couple of calls and managing a couple of people. That's kind of what led to ZenMaid, but it's more that I was working a full-time job at the time. So was my business partner and co-founder, and so we were very much doing it like on like the side. And like the way that I would think about sort of going about succeeding in that business is light years different now to what it was like then. Like then it kind of felt like we were just like along for the ride, and like I don't really know what the biggest challenge was. Some things worked and lots of things didn't, right?
but that's interesting because you essentially at 4 to 8 people, you were experiencing problems that others only experienced later because you were already stretched for your time, right? Because you had a different full-time job. Somebody else might, push through to 20 people, 30 people, but then they're managing it full time. They're managing that business the entire day, and that you already had.
Not with cleaning specifically. With cleaning specifically, like you don't like force your way to 20 or 30. 20 or 30 is a very big, very successful like house cleaning business, but like you could brute force your way to like 6 to 8 long term, right? Like that's something where an owner that's still willing to do the cleaning could pick up the slack from everyone that drops out and stuff like that. But like one of our challenges was that like me and my business partner, we weren't going to go in and do any of the cleanings in like an emergency. So we had plenty of situations where we had to just pay another contractor to go in and just pay them double because the first contractor just completely like messed it up and we just didn't have another way to solve the problem. So like that's the thing, is we weren't very well positioned to solve our own problems there, which really limited growth, right? So yeah.
So what was the specific trigger moment for you to start building software? Was it a problem around scheduling? Was there like any specific situation or story where you said,
Nope.
There must be a fix for that?
Nope. This is where like I might not be like the best like story here. It's like honestly, it was just one of my friends just came to me and essentially so what it was the main reason that we didn't have that problem was because from day one my business partner had built us a website with this little sort of like back-end scheduler that we were using so that I didn't have to send any reminders, and so that my scheduling tasks were very simple, very, very basic, right? And so we'd built this little back-end system, and it wasn't like it was like, this was kind of the point of the maid services. We were trying to automate things from the get-go so that I could manage it with maybe an hour of calls a day between a couple contractors, a couple incoming client calls, and all that stuff. And so what happened was my co-founder for ZenMaid, he approached me at some point and was like, hey, I've seen what you guys are doing on like the back end here. And what's funny is that he initially didn't think that we should actually target maid services. He was more like, hey, you and I should partner because clearly you're doing something right on the sales and marketing. You have a sense for the software, and then I can build the software. And then after a couple of iterations, we ended up coming back to maid services and deciding that was the problem to solve.
Who did you think would the target audience be otherwise? Did you want to platformize the business or just grow it?
No. It was literally just that we wanted to look at other specific niches. It was essentially like we were like,
or scheduling is an issue.
Well, no. We would like forget about scheduling because we hadn't even come up with the solution, right? So it's not that like, we're going to take this and build it for someone else. It was essentially we were going through a course at the time that was like how to start your own software without knowing how to code and without an idea, right? And so the idea for that course was you go talk to a bunch of lawyers and see if they all have the same problem you can build a software to fix. And so from my co-founder's perspective is he was like, hey, I get that you've run the maid service, but I think it'll actually be a crutch, and that like we're going to get false positives, and that like if we can sell another industry on this being a good idea or on us developing something being a good idea, that's like almost the ultimate validation. And then we kind of tried a bunch of other things and we're like, this is dumb. Let's just talk to maid service owners. And then as soon as I started picking up the phone and calling maid service owners, everyone wanted to talk to me because I was like, hey, I run a maid service. Do you want to have like a little chat or whatever? And so that's actually how we ended up on it, where my experience running the maid service gave me an in for all of our early customers, and it gave me the common language to speak and a good understanding of kind of like the problem set that we needed to solve. But in hindsight, honestly, the biggest benefit for me was the confidence. That was pretty much the only thing. The rest of it I really had to learn.
I see. But that's very interesting, though. So you actually went through this entire course where it's like how to build software. Like you already had a tiny piece. You had insights into an industry, but you were like, let's forget about all that. Who wants to build for maid services? Let me talk to lawyers. Let me talk to other people. Yeah. Would you say that... Now, obviously, there are lots of people who succeed that way, but do you think that you're at a disadvantage if you start out like that, especially if this is your first piece of software that you ever write or sell, for that matter?
So, honestly, I almost want to, like, reject the premise of, like, the question, because I think that anyone listening to this is going to find themselves in whatever situation they find themselves in with whatever life experiences they have. And it's like, it's your job or like responsibility to turn your life experiences into whatever advantage that you can. And so like, I don't really want to express an opinion on which way is better, because the vast majority of people are in one category or in the other category, and they're not going to go like relive their lives so that they can like start a plumbing SaaS by being a plumber first, right? It's like, you know, if you already have that experience, then absolutely lean into it, turn that into your superpower. But if you're not familiar with the industry, that's not a blocker, right? Like there's so many examples of people that have come into industries that they know nothing about and have absolutely crushed it, in large part because they just ignored the norms or whatever it is. So to me, it's just like, I don't really care which is better. I just know what my experience was and how I went about like handling that. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, 100%. I think giving people advice to now become a plumber to then build plumbing software is probably, I mean, it could probably work, right? But it's a bit of a long road.
I mean, well, so what's funny is that, like, I feel like if you are trying to make it for the first time, then you probably need to figure out almost like what's the fastest like path to cash. But for me, for example, with the confidence that I now have in terms of being able to build a software company, to build like a great product, and to like, you know, redo kind of like this journey, if I was going to start over with something, I probably would consider actually going and like interning or like spending a couple of months working inside one of these companies. Now, one of the reasons for that, though, is that I have the luxury of taking my time, right? Like in the past, when I was starting ZenMaid, I didn't have time to go spend 3 months like being a cleaner. Like we needed to make it work or we weren't going to be able to pay our bills, right? And so I think that's where it's like you've got to lean into your experience. But like, yeah, like I said it tongue in cheek, but like if you want to build a plumbing software, the best way to guarantee that it works is to go work. Likely you want to work in like a plumbing office, not necessarily as an actual plumber, but any experience in the actual business is going to give you a real like step up over like anyone else that you're like building against.
No, 100%. And I think there's a lot of frameworks to then also decide what industry to build in, and we'll definitely have another guest who will explain that. So stay tuned and subscribe, because that's going to be an interesting one as well. But now to just clarify, so once you started talking to other maid services, did you already have more than just your simple, landing page with a calendar, or did you have more internal tools already?
We didn't have a product.
All right,
nothing
internally.
I started talking to people about 4 to 5 months before we had a working product. And so we had clarity on what it was going to be, right? We knew that it was just going to be simple like scheduling with a couple of built-in reminders and a booking form.
Got it. And how many people did you talk to initially to get your first idea?
I think I had about 20 people. It was like I think it was 18 people that I think were essentially on like my like almost like pre-sell list of the people. Like those are the people that I was like calling and following up with in like the weeks leading up to us actually having a working product. And funnily enough, like in hindsight, out of those 18 people that were talking to me and were giving me the time of day and were like excited that we were working on this, only 2 of them actually like signed up. A third one signed up and then sent me an angry email about how we had stolen his ideas. And I was just like, bro, Like, I told you exactly what I was doing before I asked you like these questions. Like, what do you mean I stole your ideas? It was really quite funny that I was like, I asked you what you would want for in this product. You told me, and I went and built it, and you're mad at me now. Like, I don't understand. It was pretty hilarious. It was kind of like a welcome to like business kind of moment of like, yeah, like out of 18 people, 15 just completely ghosted as soon as we said we actually had a product for them, and one guy got mad at us. Like,
did anybody prepay? I guess this guy didn't.
We had one person that prepaid, Chandra from Sparkle Center in New York City, and
Shout out early adopter.
Yeah. It was like quite cool. I posted on Twitter about kind of like ZenMaid's like history, like a fun version of ZenMaid's history, and found out that like her maid service actually follows me on Twitter. So I was able to like shout her out in a thread of like, oh shit, like this is the very first ZenMaid customer. And so we agreed. She paid us $1,000 for lifetime access, which like in hindsight is like the best deal that like anyone has gotten. So she paid us $250 for 4 consecutive months, and then like that was like it. But she agreed to that in September, and I don't think we launched like the product until October. So she was the only one that we managed to pre-sell.
When was that? How many years ago?
That would have been 13 years ago.
Okay, so software development was quite a bit different. Did you go with a prototype, or did you just start an MVP right away? I presume you
started an MVP right away.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how did you get your first 10 customers then after that?
So it was all cold calling and cold emailing. That took us to about 100, and that was just leaning into my like skill set. So like I don't think that's necessarily the best way to do it. I think it's an effective way to do it, but like if you have the skill set, right? So I had a VA who was sending I think 20 or 50 emails a day using like Yelp, just finding on Yelp different maid services, finding their email address, and then just sending them like a quick question type email, like what are you using for your scheduling or something along like those lines. And then I would pick up the phone and would call all of those companies every morning before I went to work. So like 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. And then most of the day on Saturdays, I'd spend like maybe 6 to 8 hours like cold calling on Saturdays. And that was my schedule for probably about 6 months that I was probably doing that to get the company off the ground.
From what you said before, asking people for feedback, that really worked. Like, hey, I'm in your industry. I'm thinking about something. Can I get your feedback? Can I get your thoughts on something, right? People said yes, I presume, right?
Yeah.
Now that you actually had a product, having something to show, do you feel that improved the situation, or were people thinking, this guy's trying to sell me something now?
Well, so we... when I found something that worked, I was pretty good about keeping it that way. So like essentially like I didn't change our approach after we had the product until I kind of had to reveal that. So it's still like, we still open just as many conversations, but of course people are going to have their guard up as soon as they realize that you do actually have something to sell. But like I saw kind of like the thing where like I would try to really ask a lot of questions and to take that very consultative like sales approach the way that I had been before we had the working product, where like, we naturally evolved a sales like motion where I'd be asking them about like their scheduling challenges and like these like kind of like things. But then we'd have like a product to obviously like pitch them on, or to see if it was like advanced enough, right? But like I think even then it's like I took a approach of, hey, it sounds like you share some of the same scheduling challenges that I did. Me and my business partner have been working on a solution for that. I don't know if it's ready for the big leagues and to like help you yet, but it's helping a couple smaller maid service owners. If you're interested, I can share access with you and you can let us know what you think. And so like even early on, it's like I was still treating people like it's like, hey, you're going to be kind of a beta user here, right? Like it may not be perfect, but if you sign on, you've got a direct link to me and to my co-founder so that we can develop in those like kind of directions and stuff. And so we still tried to make it collaborative in the way that it felt before we had the product. But yeah, like it definitely affects things.
It sounds like you were trying to keep things in, let's call it discovery mode, customer discovery mode, until product market fit ish, so that you then knew this is no.
I wouldn't say so, because I actually just think that like I think that that's the best way to sell, but it's only an option for you to do early on in the company when it's the founder specifically.
Right.
So it wasn't about finding product market fit, that even after we found product market fit, as long as I was doing the one doing the sales, we found that consultative approach to always work the best, right? That going into a proper sales motion was great if we were trying to get other people to do it, but as long as I was the founder and had a lot of control of the product, people really liked feeling like they were still going to be a collaborator, even if they were our 501st customer.
No, okay, that makes perfect sense. So was that was your best acquisition channel early on, I presume?
Yeah.
What came
first
next?
100 customers. So around 100 customers, we essentially got lucky with a partnership that essentially we joined a LinkedIn group for cleaners, and the lady who ran the group almost declined us because she saw that we weren't running like an actual maid service, and she just like on a whim picked up the phone and called us, and turned out that she'd been working with another vendor in the industry who she was not happy with, and we essentially were like, yeah, we'll do whatever you say, because we don't have anyone else to build for, right? And so that was probably around about 100 clients, and that really helped us to actually get the word out and to get some more word of mouth and that sort of thing, and led us down a bit of a route with finding more things like that. And then sometime around that time is when we again lucked out. It was completely by accident, but we essentially stumbled across content marketing as an effective channel. And so right around maybe the 150 mark was where I stopped doing all cold outbound, cold email, cold calling, and just went all to inbound, because we'd finally built up enough things just via a couple different channels.
But that's a very good approach. I think that's a good ladder here, because cold outreach obviously gives you the best contact to somebody. You know why they say no, because they give you direct feedback if you actually reach the right person. Then you move, but it gives you immediate results too, and then you move into slightly more indirect, slightly more inbound, if you will, partnerships, right? You're not outreaching, you're getting clients still active, you're tapping into somebody else's network, but you're somewhat dependent on them. But then the long game is, once you're very confident in your business, you build up something inbound that takes a very long time to get up and running, but then also you can reap its rewards over a very long time. Before we continue talking about how Amar scaled ZenMaid to what it is today, if you're a non-technical founder building a SaaS and need expert guidance to get your MVP launched in 2 to 6 months, that's what we do at SaaS Mastery. We've helped founders build and scale their SaaS to 7- and 8-figure success stories. You'll get a complete roadmap, product concept, access to our vetted developer network, and if needed, a fractional CTO for more guidance. Learn more from the first link in the description. Now, I know you also have an amazing podcast, so I think that is probably what you just added on top of that, right? Filthy Rich Cleaners. I love that name. I think I already told you in my email when I wrote to you. That is just the best name for a show that I have seen, I think, personally. Is that somewhat new? I watched one episode.
I think that might have launched at the beginning. Would it have been the beginning of the year, maybe last year? I don't actually know when we launched that, but we're approaching our 100th episode. The 100th episode is coming up, and so that's been a really big hit.
It has, yeah. And so, are you trying to solve generic problems for your target audience? Is that like a business podcast for cleaners in general, and then you try to talk a bit about the software in general, or is it very topic specific, like just marketing or just operations or something like that? How'd you structure it to get the right target audience?
So, I mean, essentially, like, it's hosted by Stephanie Pipkin, who runs her own 7-figure, like, cleaning business. And so just from that, she's oftentimes just talking about her like, experiences, really, right? Like, her week to week. It's funny. We always joke about this, but I know that if she's having a terrible week, then we're going to have a great podcast episode drop next week, right? Like, it's always hilarious that if I get messages from her of just like, everything's blowing up, everything's going to shit, everything's on fire, I'm just like, cool, I look forward to next week's episode, you know? Which is kind of funny. But I think that in and of itself, and then who we promote it to, right? That it's just like, just having her kind of doing it just makes it really interesting to our target market. In terms of like the strategy behind it and stuff, like, it's funny. I feel like this is like a cop out when I get asked about this, but like, my strategy is just to help maid services to be more successful. And in my mind, as long as we double down on doing that in the long run, like, we as a company will win. And so with the podcast, I don't think we ran any ads on it at all until maybe episode like 50. Of maybe at the beginning and the end, it might say this is Filthy Rich Cleaners, like, by ZenMaid or something like that. But we very much just focus on like help the audience, and then at some point we can kind of bring that back around. So we don't try to talk about ZenMaid in it or anything like that. It does come up quite organically. I mean, of course, it will come up organically if we essentially are like, yeah, we're never going to go out of our way to talk about it, right? And so, yeah, that's just kind of what we've done. And I think with that, it's like, it's much easier for me to say that because we're taking such a long-term view at the company, right? And that it's like, if you're just still trying to find product market fit or to get your first 100 customers so you can like quit your job and pay your bills, then like, do not take like what I am saying right now as any sort of like gospel, right? Like, this is a luxury that I have where I don't have investors. I don't have like anyone that I have to like report to. So we can just do things just because like we want to. And to me, that's like an advantage that we're going to have for some time. And I'm always trying to lean into it. So like a quick example there that might be cool for the audience is we do the biggest virtual conference for maid services. Like, I mean, it's the biggest conference for maid services. There isn't a bigger like live one than what we do. And so with that, this year I think it was 30 or 35 experts that are specific to like maid services, if not like general accountants or something like that, but like specifically like accountants for maid services giving talks and expert presentations and stuff. That's the kind of thing that if I'd had to convince somebody of the ROI and how much it cost us the first year to do, it probably never would have happened. And yet it's probably like our most successful marketing like thing that we've ever done.
Ah, that's very impressive. So Maid Academy's coming next, I presume.
Yeah. It's on. I mean, we kind of have that on the blog, but like adding more structure to that and turning it into like an actual kind of program is probably on the cards in the future.
I hear what you're saying with if you're just starting out with any sort of software, that's not your right strategy. That's where you're in cold calling, cold outreach territory, or events. I think, trade shows, events where your target audience hangs out. That's a good spot to get feedback from. From the early landing page with simple scheduling backend, how has the software evolved since? What does it do today?
So the core value proposition has remained the same. It's simple scheduling software for your maid service. That's it, right? Like, and everything we do kind of adds to that, but we've added on a ton of things. There's so many other features and other things that we can help maid services with. And but like I said, I mean, at its core, that's one thing is like, I'm very much a, kind of Jeff Bezos kind of like approach of like double down on the things that don't change, where like AI is amazing and AI is going to be like a great part of like our industry and many industries like moving forward. But the truth is that like AI is going to help people to do the things that they've always like wanted to do. And so for most people, it's just less admin time, right? And like, that's essentially what we're optimizing like around. And then we're also putting in a lot of effort to both delight our customers and to help our customers to deliver delight to their customers, right? Or even to their cleaners, right? So things like adding in like birthday celebrations, right? Where like the cleaners, when they log in on their birthday or in the near future, gonna get like, a celebratory thing. But like that's the kind of thing that if we'd built that a couple of years ago before we had the basics in place, people would get really angry that we were spending our time like that. So it's like now, like as a company, we have earned the right to like try to delight people and to do more creative things. And so I'm really excited for that chapter of ZenMaid that's like coming up.
Interesting. Would you classify the software in general as some sort of a CRM or ERP within your industry?
I would say that it's a scheduling software, but a lot of people, when they say CRM, that's what they're actually like referring to. Like as a marketer, I would very strictly say like we are not a CRM, but if somebody types in cleaning company CRM on Google, usually they're actually looking for us. So like it's kind of in between, but to me, like Go High Level is a CRM, or we've got some things in the industry that are actual proper CRMs,
so you're not doing
and
any
those
of
can
that.
be used. I mean, there's some overlap because like we're still like, I mean, like what CRM, like contact like record management or whatever, but like we do that, right? But like we're not managing the leads and like helping them turn the leads into paying customers with like email marketing funnels and stuff like that. Like that we don't touch. We're very much like, oh, this person, like you want to put them on your calendar, they go into ZenMaid, we help you to manage the relationship from here.
Why don't you want to go into that? Because you essentially manage and own a lead's contact data, right? If you think about what the number one tool is in a way.
It depends on where they're coming in from. Like we oftentimes don't get that data like immediately, but like, I mean, like we could do that. It just enters us into a completely like different playing field. So like, it's not a bad idea, and it's something that we will likely do in the future. But like, there's so many other things that we could make a similar argument like for. Right now, it's just not what we're trying to do at the core. Like we'd prefer to integrate with other people who are outstanding at that, the way that we're outstanding at scheduling. That's like kind of the current thought process.
Why I'm asking, and so that's a very good insight, is because a lot of people want to go in and say, oh, I work in this industry and I want to build a CRM for my industry. Or even when they only started with the scheduling part, they're like, okay, let me just build an entire CRM and this and that, ERP, beginning to end, all-in-one solution, which, to be frank, we're kind of seeing the giants do that, right? They want to build the ecosystem. They want to have everything under one roof, which, from a data perspective, has a lot of advantages too. But what would you say are the traps with that, potentially, if you just want to go in and build like an entire suite for your industry?
I mean, I feel like it's like pretty self-evident. I mean, like if you haven't built anything that works, you shouldn't be thinking about that. Like, for us, we focused on simple scheduling, and we started kind of with what was in our wheelhouse, and we've expanded from there as our capacity has expanded. And I'm very concerned about over expanding that like capacity. So like what you don't want is you don't want to try to be the all-in-one from day one where you end up with a product that's shitty at everything. Right? Like it's okay to have a product that's mostly shitty at everything as long as it's outstanding and the best in one specific area. So people will pay you just for that one thing. And then if they want to use the other parts, then like they can if they want to, or they can like use another solution or whatever. But what you don't want is you don't want to have an all-in-one where you're not actually good at anything in particular for the industry that you're trying to serve, because you'll just get crushed by folks that are more specialized in each of the different like areas that like I think people really overrate the value of all-in-one. They always go, oh, it'd be great if it was all-in-one, if it was all-in-one exactly the way that I envision. And that's really, really difficult to make happen, right? So, if you're Notion or ClickUp, by all means.
For sure. So would you say the secret is to rather integrate with as many people as possible to allow for the usage within a wider ecosystem?
I mean, I wouldn't say that it's like black and white. I'd say that's one way of like solving the problem. I mean, honestly, ZenMaid doesn't have many integrations right now, and we're going to be quite selective about the ones that we build out. I think that it's more about ultimately you should be aware of all the different problems that your clients are having to solve so that you've got an idea of essentially the competitive landscape of like, it's essentially knowing what needs to be solved, and then you can determine if you are the one to solve it or if there's other ways. So there's some things that we just don't touch like at all at the moment that we will in the future, like hiring management, for example, of like, we're just like, hey, like until you're ready to add the cleaner into the system and add them to the schedule, like we're not like part of this. And that's because there's great solutions that exist out there to help them with that hiring management like portion. So that's one where integrating doesn't actually serve any purpose, that until we build out that functionality and just add it into our software, there's no real reason to touch it.
No, that
right?
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. You got to keep it on a certain job to be done, right? Under that,
exactly.
At least, or a specific customer journey or whatever that is. Would you say that you made any major mistakes along the journey that you'd be open to talk about? Like in hindsight, would you have done anything differently?
Oh yeah, I mean, so many things. Like there's like that, that's like one where like anyone that says no is lying to themselves. Like I can't say that I regret anything, because I would absolutely say that it's all like worked out. But I can look at about 1,000 different things and be like, yeah, that was a terrible decision, and in hindsight, I should not have done that, and I would not do it if I had the same information again. But like the big one that comes to mind is, so we did a redesign in 2017 that we essentially launched without like really properly testing it. Like essentially like we were in the middle of sort of changing like dev leaders, and it was kind of like they essentially were like, we can't really do this on staging. Like we essentially have to do it live. And then when it went live, the code had not been properly reviewed. It introduced a bunch of completely unnecessary and unacceptable like bugs. And to emphasize kind of how bad it was, I mean, so first of all, we essentially critically took down a bunch of accounts from like Monday until Thursday in the middle of the week. Thankfully, we were able to like still access the accounts and access the information. So like I was very quickly able to be like, hey, send me like an email and I will send you a screenshot of your calendar so you know where you have to be and when, and we'll like make sure your operations are interrupted as like little as possible, right? So it's like we did what we could like at the time. But of the people that were paying us when we started that like transition, or when we flipped like that switch, it was something like 40% of them had left us about 6 months later. That it didn't happen immediately because it takes time to change scheduling software, but literally we lost 40% of our clients over that. Thankfully, the new redesign, it was actually a good idea. It was like the way that we launched it was terrible, but the redesign itself was very good. So we actually kept growing as a company and more than made up for it with new business. That every new client that came in that had never seen the old version was like, this is awesome. This is, you know, like, this is great. Why didn't you guys have this before? But everyone that was with us at the time that went through that was like, yeah. So with that, it was, we hadn't communicated properly, where the guy who was writing all of the code, he was under the impression that the guy who previously had been leading the dev team was like signing off on everything and like reviewing the code to make sure we weren't like introducing bugs and like stuff like that. And that guy had been like, hey, Amar, he's just sending me stuff for me to just like green light. You should just green light these things because you ultimately own the product. And like the code review part just never happened. And so we literally didn't realize this for like 2 years or something. And then it was like, you know, I was like, oh yeah, because like Arun was like out of the company by then. And Alex looks at me and goes, what do you mean? Like, I thought he was reviewing, like, that's why I was so confused about all the bugs, because like he should have been reviewing that stuff. And I was like, oh no, he didn't review any of it. So this literally happened, like, we figured it out maybe 2 years after it all went down.
Wow. That is a very interesting story. Did you have any points where you wanted to like give up on the software business, or was that like the low point?
That was probably like the low point, but no, for me, I never did. I know that my co-founder did a lot, and honestly, that was more of an opportunity cost thing. That for me, I knew that this company was like my best chance of becoming like a successful entrepreneur. And I realized at some point early on that I'd been blessed with like my co-founder, because like on the open market in Silicon Valley, like he probably would have been paid literally 4 to 5 times as much as me. So he was really the one taking the risk when we were like 50-50 founders, like at the beginning. And then I also realized that I'd like lucked my way into the best business model, where it's like essentially every month you are like, you can't count on getting paid more, but if you do it right, you will get paid more every single month, and don't really have seasonal kind of like downturns. Like you have seasonal downturns for like how fast you grow, right? Like not like other companies where it's like, oh yeah, November's just always a slow month, so we make half as much revenue. Never happens in SaaS. And then the final thing that I realized that I was blessed with was I was not a fan of how difficult my industry was to break into. And then at some point along the way, I realized that, oh, we broke in, and now that's become a moat where like if someone comes in and wants to compete with us now, we don't even take them seriously until they've remained in business for 4 years, because of the number of people that will throw the towel in between 2 and 4 years. That it's like, oh, you made it to year 4 and you're still in business and still taking it seriously? Now I'll take you seriously, right?
Which really shows how long these things take, especially with software,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I think Rob Walling called it the long, slow SaaS ramp of death, or I don't know if that was someone else,
yeah.
but it's essentially what it is, right? You got to endure in the game a little bit. It's different from a service business, as you're not break even on your first job, right? Or maybe you discard like equipment or something, but you essentially you're building, and building is expensive, and then you're finding product market fit, and then once you do that, which may be a couple years out potentially, right? Then you start growing, then you find your acquisition channel, and then it's somewhat starting to take off. What if you can share anything, what are today's numbers, team size, things like that?
Yeah, so we're approaching $5 million like annually. That we're fast approaching that. And team size is about 30 now. We had like an in-person team retreat earlier this year that I think had 22 or 23 people, which was most of the team like this year. And then actually, literally in the past like 45 days or something, I think we've had like 4 new hires or something like that. So the team's growing a nice amount like right now.
What do you really like? You already mentioned that a bit in the beginning, but what do you really like about your day-to-day as a SaaS founder? Like, what are you most proud of?
Well, so what I like the most is I like the fact that things are it's always a different challenge, that things are always like kind of changing, where even though like, you know, it's been 13 years and it's like, you know, the product, we're still striving for all the same things that we were striving for like in day one, but like how we're going about solving them looks very different from like day one. On the marketing side, it's like we're still dealing with the same kind of marketing challenges, but sitting internally and seeing the team growing, for me, I just really enjoy how like my personal day-to-day challenges keep growing like with the team. And the stuff that I spend my time working on now is just so much more impactful than it was like in the past. And then I think that if you do it right, if you've got like a good lifestyle like business sort of mindset, then you can use, you know, opportunities like the one I find myself in. You can use that to really create, you know, a good like life for yourself. So like, you know, to be honest, like all of my calls are scheduled and like stacked essentially on Tuesday and Wednesday afternoons. So like my mornings the entire week are completely mine for either deep work or going to the gym or brunch with my wife or whatever. And then my Thursdays and Fridays are essentially entirely clear. It doesn't mean that I'm not working, but I have a lot of freedom of time, and that's very much like by design.
And I presume service business owners don't get to travel that much either. We saw each other in Istanbul, Turkey, right? Just about a week ago, and then you also went to Paris in between. So that's also part of the lifestyle, I presume. What tips would you give to people starting out on this journey?
Yeah, so the main thing, this is the big thing that I tell to pretty much everyone who asks about this, who's starting out, is the main thing is just don't give up. That it's very rare that people that kind of set out to be entrepreneurs that are really like set on becoming them, it's very rare that they actually fail. And what I mean by that is lots of individual projects will fail. You hear about how 93% of businesses never make $1 million and a bunch go out of business in the first year and all of that stuff. And so the whole thing is that like your business may fail, whatever your idea is that you have right now while you're listening to this may fail. But the only way that you fail is if you stop trying and if you stop working towards it. So it might not be this idea, it might be the next idea or the one like after that, but the only way that you're out of the game is if you choose to quit, right? And that's like a nice thing with entrepreneurship, right? Is at any age you can get into it. You just have to find a problem in the world that people are willing to pay you to solve. So, and I think within like SaaS, or if you're a service business owner and you're thinking about getting into SaaS, it's just realizing and accepting that it's very much a marathon, not a sprint. Actually, here's a big one for you, Victor. The number of people that I see that think that building a software is a one-time thing absolutely blows my mind. If you were trying to build a successful like software company, you should assume that your software will never be done, right? Like we invest so much more money into the product today than we ever have before. And that's after 13 years of building for one of the oldest industries like on the planet, right? Like the fact that we're still building should be like a very like kind of sure sign that like you don't just go to like a dev house, get a scheduling system built for you one time and then go out and sell millions of dollars on it. Like it will be a constant game of whack-a-mole with like new features that you want, with bugs that pop up every time that you enter into like a new thing, right? Like all that stuff. So like really it's just like it's going to be painful and you've got to like lean into it, right? Like, you know, that's like really the best advice that I could give.
No, I love that. And that's even though you haven't really moved out of just scheduling, right? So that's that is really telling. It shows how much work it is constantly, because obviously there's competitors that you can take seriously after 4 years on the market, but still they're there, and so there's a lot to be done. Amazing. Thank you, Amar. Where can people find you personally, your company, or podcast?
Yeah, for sure. Main spots would just be on X or Twitter. The handle is It's Just Amar, or if you guys want to look me up on LinkedIn, it's Amar Ghose, and personal blog is theamericandream.com, like the American Dream, but AMAR, and yeah, I have my own personal podcast. I have been starting to publish on it a bit more. That's just more of my kind of ongoing thoughts. That's still developing, but if anyone wants to give it a listen, like, you know, I say stuff there. I don't know.
Amazing. I'm sure it's pretty good because I enjoyed this episode. So thank you. Appreciate it, Amar.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was such a valuable conversation with Amar, especially the part about losing 40% of your customers from one bad update. It's a reminder that in software, you're never actually done building. For anyone watching, if Amar's story resonated with you and you're thinking of building your own SaaS but need a little bit of guidance, I'd love to help you. Check the link in the description to book a call. Or you can just watch the next video. Stop building MVPs until you do this one thing. It breaks down the exact validation framework successful founders use before they write a single line of code. Could save you months of wasted dev time or even more. So click it now and I'll see you there.